Before this, Fuko, Andy, and Tatiana went to Rio de Janeiro to meet Unrepair. Fuko and Andy went shopping for disguises. Later, they boarded a cruise ship where an auction was taking place. On board, they encountered lavish decorations, luxurious food, and famous individuals. Fuko was taken aback when she discovered there was an auction for negators on the ship. She was puzzled, thinking that the negators must have had a tough life similar to hers. She was torn between rescuing the negator or leaving it be. Andy tried to calm Fuko down. He then explained about the negator hunters whose aim was to seek revenge against the world. Tatiana informed them about intruders on the ship's deck. She suspected some of these intruders might be negators as they didn't speak English. Jules realized these intruders were negator hunters. Andy believed that these hunters had captured the unseen. Jules clarified that the way these people were collecting negators was no different from the Union. According to Judas, they sought revenge against the world and would likely discard negators they deemed useless. Fuko saw a distinction between the Union and the negator hunters. She suspected that Jules might have tried to kill her to protect others. While Fuko was indeed frustrated with the power of negators, she didn't want others to hate them or seek revenge on the world. Andy carried Fuko as they decided to make a move. They raced through the people on the ship. Andy bit his finger, alerting the guards. He kicked one guard in the head and attacked another with his finger. He called Tatiana over and instructed her to hand him the unbreakable sword named Kirakara. The fallen guard quickly alerted his comrades about Andy and Fuko. The two continued running. A guard aimed at them, prepared to shoot even if it meant killing. Dozens of bullets flew towards Fuko and Andy. Suddenly, Tatiana appeared from a window and handed Kirakara to Andy. Andy held the sword and slashed his neck. Fuko threw Andy's severed head. She was enraged that the people ahead treated negators like commodities. Andy then shattered the floor beneath them. Both Fuko and Andy jumped down. While Fuko aimed to save the negator, Rip didn't want the negator to fall into the Union's hands. Andy soared, and Fuko hugged him from behind. They both landed safely. Fuko asked Andy about his running intentions. Andy intended to go to the warehouse where auction items were stored. He believed that the negator hunters would head there to seize the negator set to be auctioned. He planned to go there and rescue the negator before the hunters arrived. Anticipating a potential fight, Andy instructed Fuko to prepare herself. On September 9th, off the coast of Rio de Janeiro, the cruise ship continued its journey peacefully. Andy descended the stairs and was surprised to see dynamite. A guard was startled as the ship shook. Suddenly, someone snatched the key from the guard's pants. The guard was in the auction storage room. He called his colleague to inquire about the situation above. Turning around, he spotted a bright brown-haired boy attempting to flee. The boy looked terrified. The guard intended to chase him, but the boy glanced at him with his right eye, causing the guard to halt. The boy tried to run again, but the guard regained his movement. After a second look from the boy, the guard stopped once more. Confused, the boy couldn't escape. He never expected this to happen to him, having tried to conceal his abilities from others. On September 2nd, students walked into the school. The boy, Chikara, also strolled in while listening to music. Another boy approached Chikara and spoke to him in English. Chikara paused and then grew angry. He was frustrated that everyone suddenly started speaking in English. He considered the situation a prank. He pointed at the boy in front of him, frustrated that the TV and everyone suddenly started speaking English. Then he was shocked when all the students gave him strange looks. The boy in front of him was puzzled because Chikara had said something odd. Suddenly, two burly men appeared behind Chikara. They incapacitated him with a stun gun. The students were taken aback as the two men attacked Chikara. They intended to leave after reporting the incident. Upon regaining consciousness, Chikara never imagined he'd be put into a cage with other strange creatures. Trembling in fear, he couldn't resist the man in front of him. The man raised his pistol and moved towards Chikara. As the man prepared to pull the trigger, aiming the gun downward, he suddenly fell. Chikara was surprised to see the people behind the man. They were the Rip group. Rip approached Chikara and was impressed with Chikara's abilities. He found Chikara's power to halt his target fascinating. Chikara tried speaking in English. Rip asked Latla about the language Chikara was using. According to Latla, Chikara was speaking Japanese. Rip was frustrated as he couldn't communicate with Chikara. The burly man opened his bag and pulled out a Gatling gun. He intended to test Chikara's abilities by having him halt an oncoming attack. He instructed the terrified Chikara to stop the attack. Latla was shocked by the man's actions. Rip didn't mind because he believed Chikara was useless if he couldn't stop the attack. He also knew that Chikara's abilities would transfer to someone else upon his death. The burly man began a countdown, intensifying Chikara's fear. Chikara tried using his power but was too frightened. He remembered being with his parents. The burly man began firing, and hundreds of bullets flew towards Chikara. Latla was certain that Chikara would die from the attack. The man ceased his assault and looked at Chikara. Rip saw Andy holding back the attack, protecting Chikara. Andy healed his wounds, leaving Rip impressed. He then caught Fuko, who was about to fall. Fuko approached Chikara and inquired about his condition. She tied the Union tie around Chikara's neck. Andy instructed Tatiana to quickly head to the auction warehouse. Chikara was surprised that he could understand both Andy and Tatiana's words. Andy observed the man carrying a Gatling gun without ammunition. He noticed Fang, who seemed like a martial artist. He also saw Latla, who was empty-handed. He intended to look at Rip, but suddenly, Rip vanished and slashed Andy's throat. Andy swung his sword, and blood gushed continuously from his neck. Rip warned Andy that he possessed the unrepair ability. Andy attempted to cut his throat with his sword, but the sword halted. Rip believed Andy could heal himself when severing his body. Andy explained his ability to Rip. Fuko and Chikara watched Andy from behind. Andy called Fuko over and showed her his sword. Fuko understood Andy's plan. Rip realized that both Andy and Fuko hailed from the Union. He ordered them to hand Chikara over for execution. He intended to transfer Chikara's power to someone stronger. Rip expressed gratitude, as the shared language made it easier for him and the others to hunt negators. Andy carried Fuko and dashed towards Rip. Then, Fuko severed Andy's neck with her sword. Andy's head fell and then leaped. He attacked Rip with the parts bullet head technique. Rip was shocked by Fuko's beheading of Andy. Suddenly, Tatiana appeared and captured both Fang and the burly man. The muscular man's name was Creed. Creed told Rip not to worry. Chikara was stunned, while Fuko was delighted to see Tatiana. Tatiana instructed Andy to hand over Fang and Creed to her. Andy gripped his sword and charged at Rip. He wounded his hand and used the repair boost technique. He swung his sword, but Rip managed to evade. Rip cut both of Andy's wrists, terrifying Chikara again. Rip doubted if Andy could recover from such a slash as before. He warned that Andy's actions would be futile. Then, Andy swung his arms and sliced them with his sword. Fuko was shocked, and Chikara became frightened once more. Andy utilized his severed arms and executed the parts bullet forearms technique. Latla stood in front of Rip, and suddenly, Andy's attack changed direction. Andy believed this was due to Latla's ability. Rip was impressed and invited Andy to join his group. Andy stepped back, and then Rip told Latla to fix his nose. Latla agreed and touched Rip's nose. Rip was impressed with Andy for cutting off his own arm to attack him and thus negating Rip's abilities. Latla pulled Rip's nose, causing blood to flow. Rip tried to recruit Andy again. Andy immediately declined Rip's offer. Having seen the unrepair ability, Andy realized Rip wouldn't be able to kill him. Rip was taken aback after hearing Andy's words. He then invited Fuko to join him. He was impressed that Fuko beheaded Andy without hesitation. He didn't like Chikara, believing he couldn't use his power due to fear. He also thought Chikara couldn't meet the criteria of his power not moving due to fear. He intended to kill Chikara for being useless. Andy gripped his sword while Latla held Rip's arm. Rip explained that he was only gathering tough individuals. He intended to take over the country once his group was complete. Fuko grew angry and shouted at Rip. She told Rip to blame the gods who caused the events. Rip disagreed with Fuko. He felt he didn't need to sacrifice lives for his goals. Andy charged and swung his bloodied sword at Latla's neck. Latla was unharmed, but his body was splattered with Andy's blood. Andy was shocked that his sword missed. He thought Latla had negated his attack. Rip spoke up, intending to kill Chikara. He threw his knife towards Chikara. Andy tried to block it with his hand but failed. Fuko jumped in front of Chikara, causing the knife to strike her abdomen. Fuko fell, and Andy rushed to her side. Rip was furious at Fuko's action. He believed Fuko had only an hour left to live. Andy tended to the injured Fuko, holding a card in his hand. Despite her pain, Fuko told Andy not to worry. She thanked him for slowing down the knife. She urged Andy to revert to his usual self. Andy agreed and let go of the card, intending to confront Rip's group. Guards arrived at the scene, so Rip and Latla left. Rip bid farewell to Andy before departing. The guards approached angrily, targeting Andy and Fuko with their guns. Andy was frustrated, but the guards aimed their pistols at him. Andy was uncertain about what to do next. Suddenly, Chikara draped his coat over Fuko's wound. He apologized to both Fuko and Andy. Andy warned Chikara not to touch Fuko's skin to avoid causing further harm. Chikara was surprised but then stood to face the guards. He asked them to call a doctor and to release Fuko. The guards didn't listen and then fired bullets at Chikara. They spoke, intimidating Chikara. Chikara remembered being with his mother. His mother, lying in a hospital bed, told Chikara to take care of those who would do good to him. She instructed him to assist those in need. The guards fired their guns. Chikara's mother believed that those who helped and were helped by Chikara would become very precious to him. Chikara screamed, causing all the bullets to stop in midair. Chikara possessed the unmove ability, which could halt bullets and the guards. Andy could still move and spoke to Chikara. Chikara apologized for injuring Fuko. He hoped his power could help Fuko. Fuko smiled, while Andy was impressed by Chikara's actions.